Hey there, Stampers. Happy Friday. My name is Sherry Roth. I'm a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Alberta, Canada, and I'm excited to be here today to share three fun card ideas with you. And I will be using Stampin' Up's Pop and Buy bundle. However, I know not everyone owns this bundle, and it is a very particular bundle. Maybe it's not one that you want to buy, maybe it is. After you see the cards that I make, they're pretty cute. Um, but I will share ways that you can use the ideas that I'm sharing with you today with products that you already have on hand. So I'll be sharing kind of tips and things that you will look for in your collection um, that can substitute what I've used. All right, so we're going to jump right in. I've got a busy day today. I am heading out to a crop with some friends. So I'm going to spend the weekend crafting. So it'll be fun. So, anyways, this Popping Buy bundle is available as an online exclusive item through the Stampin' Up! Website. I will have a full supply list of all the project or products that I use in today's video in the description below. And yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first of all, we are going to use one of our note cards and envelopes. So I love to use our note cards and envelopes because they make for quick and easy cards because you purchase a package, you get 20 pre-cut scored cards and you get the envelopes as well. Now these are a little bit smaller than our traditional um, A2 size cards. So you can see here, they're a little bit smaller. Now, if you're at home and you want to use this card as inspiration, want to make your own, maybe you've got an envelope punch board that you can make the smaller envelope. The card size is 5 inches by 7 inches and scored at 3.5. So you can just cut that from white cardstock or whatever color card base you want. Okay. All right. So I love to turn to the note cards and envelopes if I'm looking to mass produce cards or need a quick and easy card. It just saves the step of having to cut and score your card bases. Okay, so we're going to take this card base and we're going to stamp the background. So I'm just going to bring in some scrap paper here and we are going to use Daffodil Delight, which is one of our new 2025-27 in colors. And we're going to use some of these adorable little popcorn images. We're going to stamp the background. So we're just going to stamp a few of them. Just make sure that's well inked. And there's three different ones. So we're going to use all three. So I'm just going to switch it out here. Let's do this one going this way. And then we'll use this little one. I feel like this one could pass as a ghost as well. Kind of cute. All right. And then let's stamp one of these on the inside as well. And we can stamp our envelope. Okay. We're going to leave that out. We're going to set these two pieces aside. We can set this aside. And now I have a piece of white cardstock that I have cut using the second largest rectangle from the Nested Essentials dies. Now, if you don't have the Nested Essentials dies, you can use any label shape. So maybe you've got a larger punch that you want to use. You could just cut a rectangle. This measures about 2 inches by 2 3/4. So you could just cut a rectangle, or maybe you've got some other rectangle dies that you can use. So there's lots of options for this. This one is easy to substitute. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to take this image here and we're going to ink the whole thing up with yellow. And then we're going to use our blender pen. And I'm just going to remove the ink from the feet at the bottom. And then I'll bring in my black Stampin' Right marker and just color that in. Now, if you don't have this stamp set, you can look at any of your stamp sets. Anything that has something that you can use in the background, and then something maybe with a little bit of a larger focal point. So I'm sure If you're like me, you probably have a few flower sets or leaf sets that will work. I'm going to share a more vintagey feel one that uses this card layout. Okay, so we're stamping that right in the middle there. Okay, and we're done with yellow. So we're going to put that away. We're going to bring in some red and I'm going to clean my stamp. And now we're going to ink it up with red and I'm going to bring in a scrap piece of paper and I'm going to stamp it. I'm really just worried about getting just the basket, the popcorn basket. So I'm not inking the whole thing. You can ink the whole thing because you're going to cut it apart anyways. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take my blender pen and this time I'm going to take the eyes, remove the ink from the eyes and the feet, and then bring my black Stampin' Write marker. So you can go right over top with your black Stampin' Write marker. The two colors that we're using are significantly lighter than the black. So you don't have to use a blender pen to remove the ink, but I like to do that, especially if your ink pads are really well inked. I'm just going to give that a huff and stamp that down like that. All right. And we've got one more thing that we're going to stamp. I've got a strip of white. So this is just a scrap piece of white cardstock. And I'm going to stamp the pop it in to say hello, just using some Memento ink. And we're going to trim this down because it's a little wide. So I'll bring in my paper trimmer. And let's make sure it's straight here. All right. Okay, so now we need to put our popcorn pieces together. So what I've done is I've taken this die and cut this image out, and then this is what I'm going to get. So I'm going to get this here. All right. This happened, I cut this off straight because it was at the top of a piece of cardstock. And what I want is I just want the popcorn basket. So I'm just going to take my paper snips and just fussy cut around here, just leaving a little bit of white. I tried using my Stampin' Write markers with this, and I just did not like how it looked. Our Stampin' Write markers are great, but when you've got solid images like this, these stripes are more solid. I find that sometimes they look really streaky. So I wasn't getting the look that I wanted. So this is why I'm doing it this way. So now I've got my red basket that's going to go on top and I've got my yellow popcorn. All right, so that's what I've done there. The other thing that I've done in this die set, there are these adorable little black or shoes that I've die cut from some black and these 3D glasses that I went ahead and die cut. So let me grab those. All right, so we've got those and that. And now we can go ahead and start assembling. So we're going to use some dimensionals on here. So like I said, you could substitute this with maybe some leaves or um, some flowers or anything really. Like it would be really cute. Do you remember that taco set that we used to carry? It would be really cute with the taco set. You could replace these with some tacos and you could do a more taco themed card, which would be fun. You could really use anything. So you basically just want to stamp your background and then stamp your focal point. And it's nice to have a few little layers. Okay, so dimensionals there. We are going to use some dimensionals on here. So if I'm mailing this card, this may require extra postage because we've got a double layer of dimensionals. You don't have to. You can stick this on flat. So that's just going to go right over top of that like that. We can set that aside. And these two pieces, we're going to trim this down so it's a little shorter. Just snip that and this side here. So, and then for your greeting, what you're looking for is you just want something that's a little bit longer and narrower. So a single line greeting, you could do a happy birthday. I'm sure you've got some longer greetings that are all on one line. We're just going to put that right over top of this black cardstock so that we have probably just a little bit less than 1/8 of an inch of the black showing. And then we'll trim this down. And then this, you know what I did? I snipped off these feet. You know what? We're going to leave them on. We're going to leave them on. Okay. So now I'm going to put a dimensional on either end or on both ends. On my sample, I had snipped off the feet, but we'll make it work with them on there. And then this is going to sit over top of the raised label part. Just like that. I think that looks straight. We'll add a little bit of multi-purpose glue here and here to add our shoes. Look how cute that is. I love these little shoes. And then we'll add a little bit of adhesive behind our glasses. And we'll pop those on here. Look at that. So cute. All right, and then we're going to finish this off with just some black twine that I've tied in a bow. And I'm just going to add that right on the corner here. We'll pop that on there. And there we go. So there is our first card. And like I said, I would share kind of the same card, just using different supplies. So here is another one that I created using the same layout. So completely different feel to it. So I have used, let me check the name of this bundle here. This is the Textured Notes stamp set, and I created almost like a collage background. So instead of having like lots of white space in behind, what I did was I stamped the entire background and I used images from this Textured Notes stamp set. I did throw in some speckle or some splatter that is from the Elements of Text stamp set. So I did that in a variety of colors. I believe I used crumb cake, pecan pie, old olive, and early espresso. All of the images were stamped off for my background. I did use the same rectangle, but I used it with some two-tone cardstock, which, by the way, our two-tone cardstock, today is the last day of the sale. So today is the 11th, July 11th. Our two-tone cardstock is on sale for 20% off. And I love our two-toned cardstock. So what I did with this is I die cut it with that same die, and then I went around the edges. It's really hard to see, but I went around the edges with a sanding block just to sand off the edges so that I've got a white background because our two-tone cardstock is true Stampin' Up! Color on one side, a lighter shade on the other side, and then it's got a white core. So you can tear it, you can distress it. There's lots of things that you can do with it. We're going to use it a couple different ways today. So I added that in the middle, and then my focal point is just a leaf that I went ahead and fussy cut. And then my greeting still goes across, and I use some linen thread instead. All right. So that, and then here I've got a matching envelope. So still on a note card and envelope. Of course, you can use the same design on a standard size card as well. Okay. So those are two alternates for our first card. Now, moving on to our next card here. Pull out my pieces. Okay, set the envelope aside. Okay, so I went ahead and I took a piece of Darling Duckling cardstock, and I embossed it using the Glass and Gardens embossing folder. So this embossing folder comes in a set of two. You get this pattern, which just reminds me of kind of like a retro pattern on a glass from like the 70s. And then you also get a floral one as well that come together. So I went ahead and I embossed that. And then these both are two-tone cardstock. So this one is basic black. So you can see that it's black on one side and then it's a lighter shade, almost like a charcoal gray on the other. I'm not sure how well that's showing up. And then this is real red on this side and then a lighter shade on the other side. So we are actually going to take this and we're going to tear. We're going to tear this and we're going to tear this. And I will have all the measurements for these cards up in today's blog post, which we'll post just shortly after I'm finished with the live. And I'm just going to cut this up the center. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my black. And we can toss these. We don't need those. And then I'll cut up the center. Okay. And then we're going to bring this piece in and our strips. And we'll add a little bit of adhesive to the back of our yellow piece. And then this is going to get adhered onto our black. And we'll do the top and do the same. So I love this white core paper because I love the look of the white when you tear it. So if you were to tear our regular cardstock, Stampin' Up's regular cardstock, it is colored all the way through, so you don't get that white core. There's times when you don't want that, but there's lots of different techniques that you can do when you do have that contrasting color. All right, so now we're adding our red strips. Just like that. And then I've got two pieces of white. I'm going to take the smaller of the two. Well, I've got more than two pieces, but two larger pieces of white. I'm going to take the smaller of the two, and then we're going to adhere this down the center. And I'm kind of using my grid on my glass mat to make sure that it is straight. So, and I'm lining up the yellow piece because the yellow piece is the one that's straight. This is torn, so it's hard to use that to make sure that it's straight. All right. Isn't that fun? All right, that piece can then be added to our black card base. So of course, if you don't have two-tone cardstock, then you can just use regular cardstock. You're just not going to have that contrasting white. The other thing that you could do is you could replace it with maybe some patterned paper because our patterned paper has white core as well. Actually, I just noticed that this is hanging off the edge just a little bit. So you could do patterned paper strips because we have such a nice range of pattern paper. There are some patterns that have, less pattern and are more kind of, um, like like a color with just a subtle background. So you could replace these two-tone cardstocks with um, something like that. And then, of course, if you don't have this embossing folder, just use a different embossing folder. All right, so we've got that on there. And then this piece is going to go inside. We'll work on that in a minute. And this was cut using our Stylish Shapes dies. So this is the third largest circle. And of course, if you don't have these dies, you can use a circle punch or any shape. It doesn't even have to be a circle. So this is going to go on here. We can go ahead and adhere this. We're not going to stamp on it. Pop that on there like that. Okay. And then we're basically going to repeat the same steps as what we did last time. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to clean it first. Let's just cover my glue, bring in my cleaner. This is such a fun, happy set. It just makes me smile. I love it. Okay, so we will start with some yellow. And this time, I'll do that. And I'm just going to get some of that color. You can see how much color that you actually take off. So this is the red and the yellow that we took off of the last two stamps. There's quite a bit on there. And we need the feet to be removed from this one. And then we'll color them in black. Give it a huff, stamp it down, and then we're going to clean it. And then we'll ink with red. Actually, you know what? While I still have the yellow out, we're going to do some stamping on the inside of our card. So I'll just grab my scrap piece of paper or scrap papers, and we're going to use one of these adorable popcorn images and stamp the border or a border along the top. All right. So we've got a little bit of that yellow on the inside of the card. Okay, so now we're going to bring back our red. And this is where we're just going to just going to focus on inking up the basket. And then remove the color on the eyes and the feet. Color in the eyes and the feet in black. And for this, you want to use a Stampin' Write marker because these are water-based markers. You don't want to use our Stampin' Blends. Our Stampin' Blends should never be used on your stamps. I'll just give that a huff. Stamp that down. And then you're going to take that same die, so this die, and cut both of those out. And you'll get that. I didn't ink the whole thing. I just inked the top. And that's another way that you could do that. I'll show you that on the next card. And then I fussy cut this guy. So you can fussy cut this out, or you can take this and just like I did on the first card, die cut this and then just fussy cut around the top detail. Okay. So we can set those aside and we'll bring this in. I've also die cut the glasses, which we're going to use. Now we're going to assemble our little popcorn basket. So I'm just going to use some multi-purpose glue on here. So, and I do like to, even though I cut the feet off, it's hard to get, if you're leaving a white border, it's hard to get um, really close to the basket and not get the tops of the feet. So that's why I did the tops of the feet or the legs in black. Because if I had used them and just left them red, then the tops of his feet here would be red. If you're not leaving a white border, then you wouldn't have that issue. This is going to go on, and I use the nose to line this up. The glasses sit nicely on his little nose, so it makes it easy to line up. I say that, and now it's there we go. Okay. All right. That piece is now going to get adhered using some dimensionals. I'll just pop a couple dimensionals on here. Gonna go right in the center. And then I've got a black bow that I've tied with some baker's twine. If you follow me, you know that almost all of my projects include some twine or fiber of some sort. So I've got a black bow there. And then we're going to stamp the word enjoy. And I'm just going to bring in a scrap. So this is from the same stamp set, the Pop and Buy stamp set. We're just going to stamp it using some Memento black ink. Stamp it on there and then trim that down. I cut the dot of my eye off. And we'll then trim this down so it's a little shorter. And we'll put a dimensional on the one side, and then I'm going to use a mini glue dot on the other side because it's going to sit right on top of where the popcorn basket is, and that's already raised. That's going to sit right here. All right, and then we're going to finish this off with some matte black dots. Stick a couple of these. Pop them on there, and look how cute that card is. We can add our inside layer, and of course, we can stamp our envelope as well to match. This would be super cute if you were giving, like, a movie gift card, or even if you like to do up themed baskets, if you were gonna do, like, a movie night at home kind of themed basket, this would be super cute card to include in there. Alright, so there we go, and now here is another one that I've done. So you can see that I've taken that same design and used completely different product. So my card base is Secret Sea, which is one of our new in colors. My two-tone cardstock, so I still stuck with two-tone cardstock, is Secret Sea and Old Olive. This is just cut out from the DSP. It's Painterly Pairs DSP. It's another online exclusive. This is from the Perfectly Pairs stamp set. I just stamped it in Secret Sea ink. These are some of the gems that are part of that same collection, and then I switched out the black twine for some linen thread. And then I used a different embossing folder as well. This embossing folder is the exposed brick embossing folder. So you can see that you can take these card ideas and use whatever it is that you have. And this also reminds me that today is the very last day to sign up for my Perfectly Pairs class to go. So I will link in the description below where you can find all that information. And if you are in Canada, I can ship anywhere in Canada. If you're outside of Canada, there is a tutorial option as well. Okay, so there we go. There is card number two. And then card number three, just rearrange some of these supplies here and get my sample out so I know what it is that we're making. Okay, so set the envelope aside. Now I've gone ahead and I've done a few things here. So instead of cutting just a narrow strip like we did here, I actually used a die to die cut this. So this is the longest, narrowest die from the Textured Notes dies. So I die cut that. But of course, if you don't have this die set, you can just use a rectangle as well. Just cut a strip of cardstock. I've embossed a layer of white using the mini corrugated embossing folder. And again, if you don't have this embossing folder, maybe you've got our old crimper, which gives us a similar look. You could use that, or you can use any other embossing folder. And then I've die cut a large label shape. I use this chunky oval from the Impressions of Bloom die set, but of course you can cut a rectangle, you can cut a larger circle. Just have a look through your dies. You just want something that is a larger die shape or a larger shape. Okay. So we're going to bring in our scrap paper because we're going to do some stamping on the background of this. And again, you can use whatever stamp set. We're going to do tone on tone. So I'm going to use Daffodil Delight. You can use whatever stamp set it is that you want to use. Maybe you've got a stamp set in your collection that you haven't inked up yet. I would encourage you to pull it out and give these cards a try using that stamp set. So we'll switch out some of these images. And we're just creating our own pattern paper. Super cute. Okay, let's put aside. And we're going to start assembling these pieces. So our card base is a piece of thick white cardstock. Again, you can use whatever color works for what you're working with. And we've got a piece of black. We're going to take this corrugated cardboard or yeah, the embossed cardstock. And we're just going to take our snips and go around the edges to distress it a little bit. Give it a kind of a rustic, kind of distressed feel to it. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my snips and I'm just going to snip in here because I want to kind of give this kind of torn look. And I'm going to fold up both edges so it looks like that. Kind of a fun look. You could do that in a couple different places. I'm just going to do it in the one. And then I'll use my multi-purpose glue to adhere it to my black cardstock. And because this is textured, I'm going to use a fair bit of glue. This is just our multi-purpose glue that I've put into a fine tip nozzled bottle from Amazon. And I love it. I feel like I have more control when the glue comes out. And our multi-purpose glue is a very good glue. So you normally don't need a lot, but because this has a fair bit of texture, I like to use a little bit more than normal. Okay, and we'll adhere this to our card base. It's going to go right in the center like that. And then this piece is going to go on. And because it's going to be stuck on that embossed layer, I'm going to use a fair bit of glue. And go in the center. Okay, so now we need to do some stamping and some die cutting. So in this Pop and Buy die set, there is another kind of complementary die. It's this little film reel. So I went ahead and I cut three of those using some black or from some black cardstock. I've got my glasses, I've got my little shoes, and then I've got my popcorn, but I wanted to share with you another way that you could do the yellow bit, the way you can assemble this. So let's just clean that up. And we're just going to clean this up. We've used it a fair bit. We'll get some of this color off. Okay. All right. So we're going to bring in our yellow and we are just going to ink up just the top part because just like the other cards, we are going to layer this. So we don't actually need the whole image. So I just inked up the top part and then I'll take my black Stampin' Write marker and ink up those little feet. I'll give it a half and stamp it down. And then when you die cut it using the coordinating die, it looks like that. All right. And then I did the same thing that I've done on the previous two cards. I went ahead and I stamped the red one and a fussy cut around the top. So we can go ahead and start assembling. So we'll use some multi-purpose glue. We're going to adhere this right on here like that. We'll put our glasses on. Okay, and we're going to save our feet until we're ready. Now I'm going to take that Pop and Buy, that same green that we used on the last card, and I'm going to stamp that on this strip, and let's hope that it works. It's a pretty narrow strip, so I'm going to actually, I'm going to move it a little bit closer to the left, or sorry, the right, and let's hope it's straight. And in the center, oh, it's not too bad. Okay, we'll go with it. All right, and then this is going to go on here using some dimensionals. And it looks like I'm out of dimensionals on there. Let me grab another sheet here. Let's use, oh, I got some half cut ones here. Okay, so because this is a longer strip, I'm going to use 3. And we're going to pop this across, I don't know, about an inch from the bottom of our label shape, maybe 3/4 of an inch. So like that. And then these, because there's not a lot of space to add adhesive on these, this would be good to actually die cut using adhesive sheets. So you wouldn't need to worry about this, but I'm just going to add a little bit of adhesive just in a few areas here. And we're going to take this and pop it underneath here like that. And then we're going to add another one. This one going this way. And then we'll add our third one. I would love to see a nice big die shape that does these film strips like this. So this, if you overlap it, it gives the illusion that it's one longer piece. So like that, that's just going to be kind of in the background. And then we're going to use some dimensionals for this guy. And he's just going to sit on here like this. We can add our feet. So I'll just add a little bit of adhesive to the bottom here. Here. So cute. All right, and then we're going to bring in some more of those black matte dots. And there is our card. So I didn't do anything on the inside of this one, but of course you can stamp some of those little popcorn images. You can stamp another one of these guys, add that on the inside. But there is card number 3. And then for the bonus project, I did something completely different. So I used the Gallery Blooms stamp set. So I used this floral image and then I stamped this in the background. And you can see that I used that same oval die because I absolutely love that die. That whole set. I love the flowers that are in it. I love it so much. It will be one that I use over and over and over again. But what I did was I cut a piece of just copy paper And then I cut strips of basic beige two-tone cardstock. So I think they were 3/4 inch strips, and I added them to my copy paper, alternating. So the basic beige side, the lighter side, basic beige, lighter, and just went down the piece. And then I die cut the oval shape to give a little bit of a multicolored, subtle pattern. And then instead of stamping all the way around or all over it like I did on this one, I just stamped that one image kind of a couple times in the background using basic beige ink. And then this was stamped, and I used my blending brush to add a little bit of color and then die cut it, popped it up, added a little bit of linen thread with a happy birthday greeting and some motifs. And then the embossing folder is the exposed brick embossing folder. So you can see that they are completely different products, but it's the same basic design. So any of the projects that I share, I often say that you don't need to own what I have. If you love something that I use, then I would love for you to shop with me. But if I know that many of us have so many things in our collection, I encourage you to use the ideas that I share and use the products that you have. All right. So I hope you guys found this helpful and you enjoyed the cards. Hopefully, it inspired you to get crafty this weekend. Thank you so much for watching. If you are not yet a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. If you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up, and I will link the details for the Perfectly Pairs class to go in the description below. You'll find a full supply list in the description below. And I will also link today's blog post, which includes all of the measurements. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Have a fabulous weekend. Take care.